Hello everyone and welcome to All Things Watched. In this video we are going to talk about the brand new Hulu original series Goosebumps. Now as of right now there's only one season out and it only just aired its finale. I believe it was today, actually Friday or last night is when it came out. I'm not 100% sure if it came out last night or this morning, but I only just recently watched it shortly after I got home from work. And Goosebumps of course is a remake from R.L. Stine, who had an entire novel series based on the Goosebumps franchise, and also there's been a couple of movies, but personally, my favorite exposure to Goosebumps was actually the television show that came out in the 90s. So basically, Hulu ended up gaining the rights to do Goosebumps and do a Goosebumps original series, and so they did. And in this series, it mainly starred Zach Morris, Isa Briones, Anya Pugh, Miles McKinnon, Will Price, Rachel Harris, and of course Justin Long, and a bunch of other great actors as well. But essentially the story really follows 4 or 5 children, and then of course Justin Long's character, Nathan Bratt. Now I will give credit when credit is due, and I do think that the way that they basically how they set up this series, I thought it was very clever. And I don't mean that necessarily in the fact that I'm not saying that this was the greatest, writing or the best well-written series I've ever seen, because it certainly is not. And there were a few times when I felt that there were a couple of plot holes in the series. But what I will give credit for is how they decided to release the series and how they treated the season as a whole, because for the first 4 to 5 episodes, and the whole series, or at least all of season 1, only consists of 10 episodes. For the first 5 episodes, really, or even the first 6, they really do a really good job at pivoting and sort of going a different direction with the story itself. So basically, the first 5 episodes you're introduced, in the first episode you're introduced to all the characters, but then each episode up to episode 5, something happens to each of the individual characters, which you then find out they're all linked right back to something that happens on the first episode. And then of course when you get to episode 6, which is sort of like the second half of season 1, then the story kind of goes in a different direction, and all the kids sort of start, basically working together to figure out what's going on and why all this crazy stuff is happening and all this horror type stuff is happening. So like the first episode was titled Say Cheese and Died, which mainly followed the football player Isaiah Howard. And so in that episode, he starts seeing a ghost of somebody who's supposed to be basically dead, who appears to have been murdered actually. And so so he ends up having an episode. So in the first episode, it's all about him and him basically seeing this happen, and then also how they sort of in each episode there's sort of like a relic or something that relates to the house where that dead person was born. And so each of these relics sort of manipulates sort of the cause of something weird happening. So in episode 1, Say Cheese and Die, it has to do with the camera, where if you take a picture of someone or whatnot, like I believe like it reveals something that's going to happen to him or something. So that was really cool, the first episode. The second episode was titled The Haunted Mask, which of course follows the story in the Goosebumps lore all about literally the haunted mask. And they did do this one a little bit differently, because I believe in the novels and also in the original series from the 90s, I don't think the mask actually turned them, in the sense of it didn't change or turn them into a creature, it just sort of possessed them. Whereas here in this episode 2, The Haunted Mask, it actually changed the person and actually made them almost like a demon. Like it actually reshaped their head and reshaped their appearance and everything. So I really appreciated that. Episode 3 was called The Cuckoo Clock of Doom, which was really almost like a multiversal type episode, where one of the characters was basically stuck in a time loop because of the clock that was in there, and basically every time he started over his day, it actually recreated a different version of himself. So I thought that was very clever as well. Episode 4 was titled Go Eat Worms, which had to do with that one was a really cool episode as well, because we got to see this weird giant worm monster at the end of it, while also the person that was eating the worms almost had these supernatural abilities, and it was just really cool. He was almost like a super soldier, but because of worms type thing. And then, like I said, when we get up to the mid-season finale, episode 5, which was titled Reader Beware, this is when we start to see the full picture, and it evolves around another character who basically ends up reading this book and whatnot, and then all the characters end up getting stuck inside of a portion of this book, and ends up getting stuck inside of, almost like they're literally trapped inside the pages. So for the first half of the season, like I said, it was really cool at basically giving each character an independent episode. But then when you get to episode 6, which was actually one of my favorite episodes, Night of the Living Dummy, which was also my favorite Goosebumps book, and also my favorite part of the 1990s series, Slappy the Dummy was always my favorite part of all of Goosebumps. And they really do a good job with him here, especially because when you get to the Night of the Living Dummy, they do a really good job at sort of showing you a little bit of an origin story, and they actually sort of I believe it was in this episode when they actually go back in time, and that was really clever. I thought that was really smart for them to do that. And then also, like I said, when you get to Night of the Living Dummy, you sort of start to pivot away from the independent stories of each character to now all the characters are working together to see the bigger picture, and they start to learn about the history, about why the guy, a certain person was murdered, and it sort of goes back to their parents a little bit. It almost felt like the Marvel's Runaways at times, because in the Runaways are all working together, and their parents are sort of like villains. Well, I sort of felt like that, and sort of had that kind of vibe in episode 6. And then, of course, for the last few episodes, episodes 7, 8, 9, and 10 was titled Give Yourself Goosebumps, and then episode 8 was titled You Can't Scare Me, and then 9 was Night of the Living Dummy Part 2, and then episode 10 was titled Welcome to Horrorland. And in those episodes, basically the story ends up coming to a conclusion, and you realize, and they do a really good job at sort of explaining the origins of Slappy the Dummy, or the living dummy, and they sort of do a great job at showing the backstory and how it all originated, and why like the ghost of the dead kid was lingering. And I just felt like they did a really good job at wrapping it up overall, and it was pretty cool. But I think that if I had to nitpick it a little bit, I do think that some of the episodes felt a little bit rushed. They did spend a little bit of time doing certain things that I just wasn't interested in. I feel like I wish Justin Long's character Nathan, I wish he was actually in it a little bit more. I wish they had to focus on him a little bit more, and I just wish that they went a little bit darker. Now, I still like the story, I still love the series overall, but I wish they went a little bit darker than what they did. I wish that the stakes were a little bit higher, because even though each episode, the kids and the children and the main cast was always at risk, they were always in these really weird, dangerous situations, I never really felt the stakes. Even in the very last episode, the finale, like, I feel like we got a lot of really cool episodes, but the stakes were never real or high enough. And so because of that, I feel like for me, it took away from the experience of what I used to have watching the original 90s Goosebumps. But then again, I was also much younger then as well, so I understand that Goosebumps was always really more of like a young, adolescent or like a preteen type novel series as opposed to an actual adult. But I would very much be interested in seeing an adult version, like a rated R version of Goosebumps, and I think that that's what I was sort of hoping for going into this one, but unfortunately that's not what we get. But at the same time, they didn't advertise for that either, so I can't be too picky about it, I guess. If I had to put a number on this one, I'd probably give it 65%. Still wasn't as good as the original series in the 90s, and it's definitely not as good as any of the books. I don't think the books definitely do a far better job. But in terms of the cast, the characters, the development, the story, all in all, I do think that they did a really good job at keeping it consistent, at least in the sense of story. There were certain elements of certain characters that I thought were a little inconsistent, but for the most part I thought they did a pretty good job, within the world that they built themselves. I thought Justin Long did a phenomenal job, and I think the biggest problem I had, like I already said, was that he wasn't in this movie enough. But overall, I did enjoy it, and I was entertained, and if you are a Goosebumps fan, then I would definitely recommend you watch it. And if they do a season 2, I'll definitely follow these characters again, and I'm definitely excited to see where they go from here. But I gotta say, I love Slappy the Dummy. The best episodes in this season for me were all the episodes of that had the living dummy. And so with that being said, folks, that's my review of Goosebumps. Let me know in the comment section below if you've seen it, and if you liked it, tell me why or why not. If you like this video, click that subscribe button. And if you want to help the algorithm grow, once again, like, share, comment, and all that stuff. And that's pretty well all I got. So until the next video, take care.